Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Rock and Roll podcast. Check out this record. My name is Frank, and with me is my good buddy Mark.
Hey, Frank. Hello, listener.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music Podcasts, and you can see these mugs right here on the YouTube.
That's right. But you might be asking yourself, when does this wonderfully charming little podcast get released so you can hear it sizzle as it comes off the presses, as it were? It's a great question. Thank you for asking. Fortunately for you, we drop new episodes each and every Friday for your listening, and as Frank mentioned, viewing pleasure.
When you said sizzle, I thought you were going to say sizzler, and I got really excited right there.
I could go for a buffet right now, dude. I don't know if buffets are going to last after COVID. Do you think they will?
No, I think they're done. I think they're done.
And it's probably for the best.
Absolutely. And speaking of Sizzler, real quick, not to divert too much, but in '88, my mom fell in the Sizzler, and
oh my God.
Yeah, she's okay, just so you know.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't sue.
Her
loss. Anyway.
Yeah. I thought the D in Frankie D stood for dollar bill because your mom did the Sizzler, and that's why there's the Sizzlers left. But
she could own the Sizzler before.
She could own a Sizzler.
Yeah, could have. So listen, if you're hearing this for the first time, then you're probably not annoyed with one of our past reviews. So welcome. We review records track by track, and we have lots of musical discussions, and we do spotlight episodes, wink, wink, which might even include some mysteries. And we've only scratched the surface, and we're just getting warmed up, right, Mark?
Yeah, that's right. The oven's on, the surface has been scratched, and we're ready to go. You know, you really got to check out, and we promise we're working on these, our verse series, where we'll pit two bands or albums or just ideas and concepts against each other and make them duke it out like two professional boxers trying to pay for a new toilet or total stereo domination.
Man, that's a religious moment. I'm telling
you.
Dude,
I've been working on it for like 3 days.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook. Hopefully these episodes will leave you wanting more of our musical goodness. And as you heard, Mark's random nonsense. But if you have a record you want us to check out, just drop us a comment wherever you find us. On YouTube, if you comment, I'm going to reply back what records you want us to check out and possibly review. Subscribe, rate, review. So I'm going to say this, Mark, are you ready for some face-to-face?
Some? No. All.
Nice.
Now that I'm done talking like a caveman, we're going to literally cannonball all the way through their entire catalog like a fat kid hitting the pool on the first day of summer. It's going to be, I'm going to enjoy it. Frankie?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and if you've listened to our previous Spotlight episodes on Rancid and Fugazi, then you know what to expect. If you haven't, you're going to have a great time as we take you through the career of a band that I might say is a little underappreciated. Question mark? We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I think on the script, Frank has 7 question marks right there. Face has seen their share of adversity, certainly. Sometimes from within the band themselves, a little bit of infighting there. And some of it, believe it or not, with the audience. But before we get into the albums and why they didn't and before we get into the albums and why don't you, holy crap, my brain, give the listeners a little background on the band there, Frank?
Okay, let's start getting into it. So their beginnings can be traced back to Southern California in the year 1988, Anno Domini, Mark. And the singer, guitarist Trevor Keith and bassist Matt Riddle, they've been friends since high school. After being in a short-lived metal band named Victoria Manor, they took a new musical direction, and in 1991, they became, Mark, what we're doing right now, Face to Face, my friend.
Can we talk? Victoria Manor is kind of a terrible name.
I would just love to hear what they sounded like.
Oh, I got a feeling you don't.
But maybe not, right?
Yeah. I feel like you say that and then you hear it and you're going to go, I'm sorry I asked for that.
Yeah, sorry, absolutely. They frequently played the OC area with bands such as Offspring, Guttermouth, Voodoo Glow Skulls. And in May of that year, they were offered a record deal with Dr. Strange Records. Everyone's heard of them. And in 92, we get their first album, Mark, Don't Turn Away. So 1992, Dr. Strange Records. So here are the facts, okay? There were 3 pieces this time. Trevor Keith, Matt Riddle, Rob Caruth. Face to Face actually assisted with producing this record, and Disconnected, we all know is a big song in their catalog, and No Authority were released as singles. Okay, so I'll give a little blurb about it, Mark, and then we'll get your
Mhm.
take on it. So this is one of two face-to-face records to be released as a trio. The production, listen, isn't overly great since it was on a small label, which at times can make it sound dated. However, this it sounds tight, and this is a record you can play from front to back and be pleased. It's a perfect mix, I think, of Husker Du meeting Social D, and it's a super strong debut. The songs aren't overly complicated. Hey, that's okay. They're fast, shiny, sharp, and the energy level is through the roof. Keith, from the beginning here, I always thought of he has a very powerful voice, and to me, on a side note, he always looked like Mike Ness and James Madsen had a kid.
Hmm.
And so it's the early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I could yeah, I don't know, Mr. Blonde, the Mr. Blonde character and Mike Ness, they had a kid to be Trevor Keith. I guess that's my point I'm getting.
Okay. You dressed like that dude for a long time. I realized that today.
When I had hair.
When you had hair and you would wear the bowling shirts.
Oh my god, yes.
I remember that shit.
Woo! I still have one bowling shirt left. Anyway,
Nice.
uh, um, so listen, it's an early '90s punk classic, and I could see why. And once the re-release came on Fat Records, I can see why it's a vital cog in their catalog. It has some really great tracks. Disconnected, No Authority, You've Got a Problem, Pastel, very strong debut. Mark, your thoughts? Don't turn away.
Yeah, I absolutely love this record. It's raw, it's earnest, and powerful. We have the same favorite tracks, believe it or not. It's a great length of a record. The
Yeah,
pacing on it is perfect. It really carries that pre-pop punk sound of the early '90s that influenced so many bands. Just really fantastic. In 1993, the band added uh, Chad Yarrow as an additional guitar, and they began writing material for a new record. Before before they recorded that material, they signed to they signed a recording contract with Victory and A&M Records. After recording, they released an EP in 1994 over it, and in 1995 we got Frank Big Choice.
there you go.
So the facts. We're now a four-piece, right? We've got Trevor Keith, Matt Riddle, Chad Yarrow, and Rob Kruth. This is going to be the last record with Matt Riddle, re-released with Disconnected and a little cover there, a little Descendants, some bikeage. And then Debt was released as a single for this album. You know, it's an amazing sophomore effort from this band, especially considering that this was their first major label and they took a lot of heat for that from their fans. But you can hear them growing musically and lyrically, feel a bit more mature, as well as maintaining that kind of pissed off teenage aesthetic that the band was known for. Now, I say teenage, they were in their 20s, but they carried that sound, and it's easy to understand why punk rock in the mid 90s really gravitated towards this band. When it comes to the title track, you get why they picked it for this album. It's punchy and provocative. It's a great example of how Trevor works his life choices in song and leaves it all out there for the listener to decide if he's done the right thing or if he's doing the right thing. If he's not, and allowing the listener to really make up their mind on those. It's really, really quite well done and really interesting. My favorite tracks on this one include the song Velocity, Big Choice, Debt, and A-OK.
Nice, nice. Yeah, and we were talking too. It's crazy because you see this album and you're like, well, you really don't know what to expect, right? It's a machine out in the field, and it's one of those machines where you could, what's the proper name for those, Mark?
That's the claw machine, Frank.
Yeah, it's a claw machine. Thank you. It's slipping my mind. There you go. So you don't know what to expect. Listen, I like this album a lot. It has their twin guitar sound, gives them a fuller sound. The production is, I don't know. At times I sensed it was weird, but it's better than Don't Turn Away. And but it's still not there. But they're working towards it, which you could tell. I really like the song "Struggle," sensible. It's not over, and not to mention, this is the time where "Disconnected" was actually featured in the movie Tank Girl towards the end. Although not on the soundtrack, weird. It was great exposure for the band. So now the band continues to tour with the punk bands that we all know from the '90s, California. Area. And Matt Riddle leaves the band, which I believe is for No Use for a Name, but Mark said it was Pulley first, right? And then No Use for a Name.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So he
That's
wrote songs with Keith. So much of this next album is now with help with new bassist Scott Shiflett. Yes, brother of Chris Shiflett of the Foo Fighters. So here we go. Self-titled, Face to Face, released in September of '96 on A&M. Trevor Keith, Chad Yarrow, Scott Shiflett, and Rob Kruth. I Won't Lie Down was released as a single, and Shiflett collaborated on tracks with Trevor Keith. This is a fantastic album. I mean, to me, every song on it is great. It combines their songwriting and high production into something that still sounds good today. It's a great progression forward. They're getting really mature here. I Won't Lie Down, Ordinary, Blind, Resignation, Complicated. I mean, this album has it all. Mark, your thoughts on the self-titled record?
Yeah, dude, this might be the best of the best for Face to Face. I love the energy and the tone. Resignation
Right.
sets as the opener. Walk the Line and Blind are both absolute classic punk rock anthems. I could keep literally doing this with every track on the record because I just started with the first three. I Won't Lie Down, Everything's Your Fault, Complicated. I could just keep doing it. Plus, I totally love the cover of Painted Black as the bonus track.
So awesome.
It's pretty awesome. This is Frank and I are going to do our. We're going to list the Face to Face albums as we see them. I think you can pretty much guess based on our reaction right there. This guy's going to be very high to the top, if not the top for both of us.
Spoiler.
Yeah, just fantastic. Frank, you ready to jump into Ignorance is Bliss?
Hit me up. Do it.
Yeah, absolutely. July 27th, 1999, Beyond was the record label. Beyond. The same setup as last time. Oh, no, excuse me. Different drummer. Trevor Keith, Chad Yarrow, Scott Shiflett.
Yep.
And Pete Parada.
Yes.
It's the first record for Pete Parada. The Devil You Know, God is a Man, released as a single and appeared on the movie soundtrack for the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie. Pretty cool. This album was a departure from their previous pop punk / skate punk sound and leaned far more into that late 90s alt rock. As for a long time, excuse me, and for a long time, the band refused to play any of the album live. In 2012, they had a change of heart and toured on the album, playing the whole thing acoustically. To be honest, I like it way more than I had anticipated. I think they did a great job of encompassing that late 90s alt sound, and I'm surprised they didn't get more serious radio play out of songs like Heart of Hearts and The Devil You Know, God is a Man. Seriously, put this band on tour with Everclear and or the Goo Goo Dolls, and they would have had a completely different life from this point forward. But
Totally.
I think that they got a little pigeonholed for having been a punk rock band, and I think things like that were out of their control. They tried to do something different, and people just weren't picking it up, and it's too bad. I also really dig the track Apathetic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Check that out. What do you think, Frank?
This is a critical point for the band, and I actually feel legit bad for them. Trevor stated, and I'm going to be paraphrasing here, that they put so much time and effort into this record. They're very meticulous with the songwriting and the production, and they were so very proud of it. I mean, Overcome, Burden, Everyone Hates It All, Know It All. Seriously, man, these aren't bad tracks, right? Then they released it, and Trevor stated, "You hated it." And he was very disappointed, and I don't blame him. I mean, it's not like they delivered us shit on a platter, right? Sure, it was different, but the reaction from the fans, man, really put the band, I think, in a bad spot professionally. Keith also submitted the song "The Devil You Know, God Is a Man," great song by the way, to the radio station, and they gave him shit. And he was like, "Okay, guys, I give up." So I'm saying to you fans at the time, screw you guys. It's not a bad record. It's really not, and especially as you're going to see as we keep progressing here. In retrospect, Ignorance is Bliss is a good record. So obviously, well, how do they react to that, Mark? Guess what they call the next record?
I don't know. It sounds like they picked something really reactionary.
Reaction, right? Exactly, Reactionary. So that was released on June 2000 on Vagrant, right? Remember Vagrant?
Yeah,
Um, so Trevor Keith, Chad Yarrow, Scott Shiflett, Pete Parada. The fans decided on which songs ended up on the final version of the album.
terrifying.
A poll. Could you imagine? Just on a side note, a poll on the internet in 2000, like what that must have looked like. I don't even.
Yeah,
I mean, nowadays they would text, the fans or do something.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, I'm.
yeah. So last record with Chad Yarrow, disappointed. Not in the album. The song was released as a single. All right. So as a reaction to Ignorance is Bliss, some songs have a classic face-to-face sound, and others show some slower haha, tempos. I feel like at this point, there's a checked out or exhausted feeling with them. And again, I don't blame them. I would find it extremely hard to revert back to something just to please a group of people. I'd
Yeah,
like Disappointment, Best Defense, but outside of that, I'm gonna be honest with you. There isn't much here. I remember this being in a $2 bin new at a music store in the mall back in the day when they used to have them, and I understand why. So
yeah. I mean, here's a clear-cutting case proving that fans don't always know what they want. Because this record was, well, as a title track suggests, a disappointment. Um, and from uh, Out of Focus seems to describe the band as they were struggling to find the confidence to put a record together that they believed in. You really just don't feel like the band believed in this record. That's enough using the album's untitled tracks against it. Um, the band sounds good. The production is really good, but the songs don't match up with it. And it's clear that the band isn't feeling the songs the way they did before, especially compared to the previous effort. You really can hear that the band was trying, knew what they were doing, and were focused on it. And here it just feels like they're putting together. I think you described it perfectly. I wouldn't know how to try to get back in people's graces by getting back to do something. I'd feel so fucking slighted. Um,
totally.
Despite its problems, there are some choice moments here, but they are few and far in between. We're going to move right along. What should have been the title of that album, How to Ruin Everything, released April 9th, 2002 on Vagrant Records.
Yep.
Um, so we're looking at the second of two three-piece albums. This one's just Trevor Keith, Scott Shiflett, and Pete Parada. First record since Don't Turn Away as a trio, also the last. The New Way was released as a single. The song "The New Way" was released as a single. So we're back to that kind of pop punk skate punk that we all kind of came here for in the first place. You can hear the band's commitment to that older style on display. This feels the most like the self-titled album to me in this period of the band's career. The cutting lyrics, the breakneck guitar and drum speeds, the fun bouncing bass lines worked very well for the band, and I dare say this might be their last awesome record. My favorite tracks on this guy are Bill of Goods, Why Would I Lie, Unconditional, and Shoot the Moon. And because I don't want to, I don't want anyone to say I let some bullshit slide. The title track at the end is literal trash, and I really it really doesn't serve the album in the way a title track should. I don't think it encompasses this record the way it really was meant to.
Yeah.
But considering what we understand about the band now and how the fans had really turned their back on them, and they were still putting out a record for some reason. This time as the three-piece, it kind of makes sense. Man, I just wish they would have left it out though, because
Yeah.
that sucks. Kind of ironic that they'd end an otherwise, potentially classic album on such a dud. Should have called the album Double Standard, a better track by a mile, and encompasses the album's themes in a much more direct way. I think it was a missed opportunity, and really just not a good name, unless they were just trying to pay homage to the Descendants with Everything Sucks. But I don't. Yeah, that would have just come out, so I doubt
Yeah.
it.
Hey, you never know. Absolutely. And I remember Mark back in the we used to lug around our CD cases back in the day, and this is the one you
Hmm.
had, and I
Yep.
remember us talking about it, and I liked it. Parada and Shiflet really smoke as the rhythm section here. I mean, it's pop punk, skate punk, and some rock and roll. The new way sounds really good loud. I mean, Keith's vocals are on point. It's like a revitalization for the record, and that's what we got. A wolves in sheep's clothing. I mean, come on, man. This tells us about the frustration with the music industry. Tracks like "Waiting to Be Saved" give us that classic face-to-face sound. There's some misses on here, as you pointed out, absolutely. But overall, hey, I enjoy this record. I really do. Um, so here we are now in 2003. The band takes a temporary hiatus, which I remember being bummed about. I remember us talking about it.
Hmm.
And the following year, they announced it would be permanent, which we all know never really is at the end of the day. So fast forward now, 5 years, 2008. The band announced they would be reuniting for some select shows. Drummer Pete Barada moved on to now being the Offspring's drummer, and he was replaced by Danny Thompson from the band Uprising.
Oh, I thought
Now,
he was one of the Thompson twins.
yeah, maybe both of them. So here we now are now 2011, and Mark, are we? I'm laughing now, but are we laughing later? That's something we
No,
have to
we're
think
not.
about. No, we're not. So May 17th, 2011, on Antagonist Records. Here are the facts: Trevor Keith, Chad Yarrow, Scott Shiflett, Danny Thompson. First record in 9 years. It's Not About You, released as a single. When I first heard the first track, Should Anything Go Wrong, I was like, yes, yes, Face to Face is back. Then I heard every other track, and I'm like, not feeling this like at all. It's hard to get through, actually, this record. I guess you take what you could get here, and most of us were just stoked to have the band back. I think it's super inconsistent. It makes Reactionary look like it had a solid plan of structure. I don't mind the song Under the Wreckage as well, but I don't know how often I'm going to be coming back to this record. Mark?
Yeah, Frank, that record was so hard to listen to that I couldn't. I genuinely. It took me like a whole day to listen to it one time. It was really painful. Um, so in April 9th of 2013, we get a little record called Three Chords and a Half Truth, also on Antagonist.
Yeah.
Um, Same lineup, features more of a mid-tempo and kind of classic punk sound. Um, Right as Rain was released as a single. Speaking of difficult to listen to, this might be the lowest of low points of the band's catalog for me. The opening track is laughable.
Mhm.
Welcome Back to Nothing. This was a wasted opportunity. Excuse me, that's the name of the opening track. Welcome Back to Nothing. It's a wasted opportunity for an opening track that delivers on just that. Or excuse me, no, the opening track is 1 2 3 drop, or drop 1 2 3, something terrible. You should have started with Welcome Back to Nothing, but that song's not that good either. Um, and don't start me on the need to say Right as Rain 900 times during the song, which sounds like they stole three chords from a cheesy country tune. And thanks to Frank, I know that the music is from Social D's Making Believe. Yeah. Because I was freaking out. I was like, dude, what is this? Why does this
I
sound like
know, it was driving you crazy.
it's Make Believe from Social Distortion? I was like, holy crap, why would you do that? Track 4 is called First Step, Misstep. Sounds like they stole the music from Green Day's Taking a Walk.
Hitching a ride.
Hitching a Ride, there we go. And why not use a track with a name like that as the opener? Because that would have at least it would have been the first song. There's so many tracks on this where you're like, oh, that's the title of an opener for the album. You should have
Right.
picked something. And it drove me fucking bonkers. Um, you know what? Why not use those songs as the openers? Well, because they all suck. That's why. But that didn't stop them from putting it on this record, or any of these songs. They're terrible. I tried to find something nice to say about this record. I guess the production is pretty good. Frank?
Question mark, question mark.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if the fans thought Ignorance was bad, whew, oh boy, we got a
Mm-hmm.
treat for you.
Everyone
I
you asked
mean,
for.
yeah, I mean, Right as Rain is Making Believe from Social D, Somewhere Between Heaven and Hell. And I know that was a cover, um, but I
Much better,
don't,
by the way.
right. And I don't know why there was how are there no songwriting credits thrown towards Jimmy Work, who originally wrote the song, or even Social D for the arrangement? I mean, it's that blatant. Like, that boggles my mind. Um, Here it seems like they were trying to mix the Clash, Social D, and like Wilco together, and halfway in between figuring out they couldn't do it, they just gave up. Like that's kind of what I was gathering.
Hmm.
I don't mind the song actually Smokestacks and Skyscrapers, but in the context of this album, it's a mess. And again, I feel for them because they tried something different again, and obviously it didn't work. Now, granted, this is a way different scenario than Ignorance, because Ignorance, again, you could look back, you could listen to this record, and then you go to Ignorance, and you're like, "Whoa, Ignorance is amazing." So,
I, I gotta interject there. At least
please,
with Ignorance, they were trying something completely different.
yes,
This was just like, well, we're gonna do the old formula again, but we just don't have the gas in the gas tank to get us there. So we're just gonna coast as far as we can.
thank
And
you.
it just I would appreciate trying something different.
Right, which is what you got on Ignorance. Yes,
Right. And I really like Trevor and I like the effort he makes. I like the songs he writes. Usually, this one, it just is so painful.
yeah,
Like, I feel bad for him saying that. Like, I
I
don't know the
know.
guy, I don't owe him anything. I want this to be a better record for him because I know he can write better
Yeah,
records.
yeah, that's so true, so true. So now we're in 2015, right? And the band signs with Fat Records,
Hey,
which is crazy because you would have thought all this time like that would have been a vital part of their releasing strategy. But they finally signed with Fat Records, and they're heading to the old blasting room to record this record, Mark Protection. So released March 4th, 2016. So we get Trevor Keith, Dennis Hill, Scott Shiflett, and Danny Thompson. It's a return to Fat Records because they had the re-release of Don't Turn Away, Bend But Not Broken, and Double Cross to released as the singles. And of course, as I said, recorded in the blasting room and produced by Mr. Bill Stevenson. So listen, it's not mind blowing, but it's not the past two records. And at this point, that's important. I like the modern production and the tracks Bend Not Broken, See If I Care, and Say What You Want. They give the band a classic feel, but in a modern way. Listen, I'm not saying by any means it's their best effort, but way more solid than the previous releases. Mark?
oh yeah. Like, look, they're clearly trying to bring back the sound we don't hate, which is awesome. And for the most part, they nailed it. I really dig "Bend But Not Broken" as the opener, and the next few tracks really carry on as you'd hope the album would. And then it just slowly starts to lose a little steam as you get to the B side and ends
Yeah.
pretty much without any fanfare. But still, overall, a better record than the last two for sure. It almost has a quality of like these were what was left over from every How to Ruin Everything,
Yeah.
and somebody just went ahead and let them. But it still is going to rank higher than those last two albums just because at least it felt like they were trying.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So we're turning a corner here, and we're looking at July 27th, 2018. Fat Records releases another album, Hold Fast Acoustic Sessions. So we get Trevor Keith, Dennis Hill, Scott Shiflett, and Danny Thompson. 10 acoustic versions of popular face-to-face songs covering 7 of the 9 traditional studio albums. This would be technically their 10th. So it was the 9 before that. So 7 of the 9. Anyways, I was really taken back by how good this is.
Yeah.
It sounds fucking great. Punk rock doesn't always translate well to acoustic sessions, but they did a really good job of not just playing the songs on an acoustic guitar, but rather reimagining the songs so the whole band could play a part and treat the songs as a new musical idea, even playing a few of them as borderline kind of country tunes that I think kind of pays off for them. They clearly stuck with the hits. I would have liked a few more deep tracks here, but I like that they kept it short and to the point. They didn't really give us room to fuck it up. Frank, what other tracks would you have liked to see here? My picks would have been "You Lied,"
Good one.
"A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing,"
Oh, fantastic.
and what I think is probably one of the most underrated songs they wrote, "Double Standard."
Yeah, that's great. Great. And I'll get to what I feel what I would have liked to have seen. And I was really impressed by this too. I thought it would be like corny,
Mhm.
I thought it would be like, hey, this is now a punk band doing an acoustic album, and it wouldn't work, but it did. It did. You get the fan favorites. The acoustic guitars sound really super clean and super bright. Trevor's vocals, they're fantastic here. And we get some, like you said, full on country vibes with the actual song "Don't Turn Away," which is great. It's a fun way to re-experience some classic face-to-face songs. So to answer your question, Mark, some tracks I would have liked to have seen would have been "I Won't Lie Down,"
Mhm.
"You've Got a Problem" from "Don't Turn
Ooh,
Away,"
yeah.
and actually "Overcome" from "Ignorance Is Bliss." So I
Oh.
think that would have been really, really, really cool. Now, Mark, there's actually 4 other records we need to talk about. So they're not
Right, right, right,
proper,
right.
but we have 2 live records, and then we have 2, cover records. So, if we don't mind, I'll dive into live and the live and the dive. So they have 2 live albums, right? The first one's
Mhm.
pretty cool as it covers their, songs from the first 3 records. We get a lot of goodness from "Don't Turn Away," self-titled, and we get a Social D cover, "Telling Them," which really displays the similarities at times. Like I know, and thinking about them, Face to Face is a faster kind of style punk band, and Social D's that crossover. But I don't know, like maybe it's just me in the back of my head thinking that Mike Ness is a parent too to Trevor Keith. Maybe that's why. Listen, it's a good listen. You get Pastel, you get I'm Trying. They sound fantastic live, and then we have the Live in the Dive series that sounds great. It's weird though, as it only has 12 tracks. Yeah, the cool thing about the Live at the Dive series is that they represent a live show with the extension of a nice big set. So it threw me off with the 12 tracks. However, listen, it sounds good. They play some cool tracks like Bill of Goods and No Authority. Mark, before you get into standards and practices, anything quick you want to say on the live records?
Well, I agree with you. I think that Social Distortion cover really does a good job of showing the influence Social Distortion clearly had on them as a band. Especially it's funny if you watch that Face to Face documentary they made back in 2016. He talks about how the influences they had and what was going on when they were in that metal band. How metal was kind of boring because it was all about like pyramids and shit, and they wanted music that was grabbing them a little more, and that music was punk rock. And it's clear Social Distortion played a big part in um, that process. Plus, I really like the Live and a Dive in that it gave us 12 really tight and concise performances, and they didn't do anything to mess it up um, by trying to do too much. Like I absolutely adore the Swing and Utters Live and a Dive. It's like 75 tracks.
I know.
It's
And
a
Lagwagon's is
little
pretty
long.
big. Lagwagon's pretty
Yeah,
big too, but
Lagwagon's like 120 tracks. Like this was a good like. We don't need to cover our entire career. Let's show the kids what it would be like to see Face to Face now.
yeah.
Quick, punchy. This is what you guys came for.
And the sound is great on that record too.
Yeah. Really, the sound on both records is really actually very good.
Yeah.
Um, so standards and practices 1 and 2. The standards and practices series are actually pretty cool. I like the band knew enough to poke fun at doing a cover album the way they did by naming it standards and practices, right? That said, there are some really cool choices of covers on here, on both of them, really, because they didn't choose standards, right? They didn't do the cliche stuff you would expect them to. Although there are some that you might consider like, well, that's kind of a punk rock standard. But um, and plus each of when you go back and look at the remastered and the bonus tracks on all the regular albums, there's a ton of covers mixed in there. So the fact that these stood alone is actually pretty cool. My favorite from volume 1 are going to be songs like Sunny Side of the Street, the Pogue song,
So good.
the KKK Took My Baby Away by the Ramones,
Yep.
Fugazi's Classic Merchandise.
Ugh.
Volume 2 is just as eclectic and pretty fun. Although I like the sound on the first one a little bit better, this one felt a little bit more intentionally sounding one way or the other. But I think it was a pretty cool choice. You get Joe Strummer and the Mescaleros, one of Frank and I's favorite records, and the song Coma Girl off
Yes.
Streetboard. The Jams, Private Hell is awesome.
Yeah.
But then you get them doing Joan Jett's Bad Reputation, and even the Clash's Tommy Gun, right? Clearly not the Clash's biggest hit, but really well done, really well respected the way they did it. And of course, Devo's Whip It. I mean, like it's a little corny, it's a little cheesy, but it's Devo, it's Whip It. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
It's a fun mix of tunes, and they're really done with a great deal of respect, while still having a lot of fun with it. And that's what punk rock covers are about, right? Like, it's just kind of having that fun.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you get some really good covers. I mean, on Volume 1, I know you mentioned these 2 already, but Sunny Side of the Street sounds great. Merchandise, I mean, they do that. They even made that song even more aggressive, which it's aggressive already, which is great. Volume
Yeah.
2 is awesome too. Like even songs like In a Big Country, which everyone knows by Big Country, they do that well. And my one of my personal favorites, A Million Miles Away for the Plimsouls. Um,
Mm.
I tell you what, they really, really do that song. And a lot of bands cover that song because it's a popular kind of cult favorite song. It was in Valley Girl and with Nicolas Cage, and they're the band at the punk club he takes them to. So a lot of people are like kind of into that, but they really do a nice job with that song, man.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, great listens. Definitely check them out. Well, Mark, like we've done in the spotlights before with Rancid and Fugazi, you ready
Mhm.
to rank these albums?
Absolutely. Why don't you kick us off? Give us your top, or not your top 10. Give us the 10 studio albums.
Yep.
In
Yeah.
your order of least favorite to most fucking awesome.
You got it, man. All right. So number 10 is Three Craps and a Half Effort.
Ugh.
I know. No, it's Three Chords and a Half Truth.
Yep.
Listen, man, I'm not trying to be mean, but it's just not good. It's just not good. There's not more I can say about that. The album that came out before that is number 9 on my list, which is Laugh Now, Laugh Later. Again, the first track is great. I don't know what they're doing after that. I really don't know, and I know it's been a while since they've been back. But that's a hard one.
Yeah.
Number 8, Reactionary. Mostly because the inconsistencies. They let the fans decide. They really got pushed, and I don't want to use this word, but bullied into the corner by the fans. So they had to make that one. It didn't flow well for me. A couple good songs, disappointed. Um, that's it, really. Number 7, Protection. I think it's the best of the later proper studio albums. Hopefully they build off of that. And, they're at the point in the career where they really, I'm assuming, don't need to do anything but what they've done before. But let's see where it goes. If we get another one from Fat Wreck that is kind of similar to that, and it's still good quality songs, and we're getting those, I'll be happy. Number 6 is Hold Fast. Like you said, Mark, definitely surprised by the acoustic album. Again, I thought it was just gonna be a corny punk acoustic album, but pretty good. How to Ruin Everything, number 5. I think there's a lot of stuff in here. Yes, I would not. The title track I could completely do without, but I mean, again, The New Way, Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, Bill of Goods, Waiting to Be Saved, really good stuff here. This is where it gets a little tricky, okay? And I love all these albums. Actually, I love 5 really on down. But 4, I'm putting Ignorance is Bliss for number 4 here. Go back, listen to it, people. It's not as bad as you think. Yes, it's not. There are
It's not
some.
a punk rock record.
Right, it's not a punk rock record, and you have to have that mindset while you're listening to it. But there's some really well thought out tracks on here. Not every track is going to be great too, but if you're a fan of the band and if you appreciate them in their career, definitely listen to that. Number 3 is Big Choice, great record, front to back. Number 2 is Don't Turn Away. I think it's one of the classic debut punk records of the 90s. I mean, for that to be their first record, pretty impressive. Number 1, no surprise, self-titled. It's flawless. It's really good. What about
Yeah.
you, Mark?
Yeah. So Frank and I do have a lot of twinsy moments here. In fact, 10, 9, and 8, 3 lies and a half a bag of shit. Number 9, Laugh Now, I'm Crying Later. 3 was Reactionary. At 7, I put Ignorance is Bliss.
Sure.
Um, it didn't connect for me. There's a lot of things about it that I just um, didn't love. But it's not a bad record. It doesn't fit as well for me as the others. 6 is going to be Protection. I really liked this comeback. Um, it feels classic, but of course, like I said, that B side falls a little short. At 5, just like Frank, Hold Fast, the acoustic sessions. Really, just like the choices they made, the adaptations, if you will, really well done. All the vocal performances match it perfectly. You're not getting that situation where it's just some punk hammering an acoustic guitar and screaming at the top of his lungs. They've really made some smart choices on it, and it pays off. This is where things will get mixed up a little bit for me and Frank. At number 4, I have Big Choice. I like Big Choice. If you go back and watch that documentary, they talk about this being their major label debut. They didn't want it to sound major label, so they kind of rushed through it. And you kind of get that in the sound of it. However, the songwriting is still fantastic. There's still some really choice tracks on there. And I love that record too. I'm with you from 5 down. I love all of these.
Right, absolutely.
Number 3 is How to Ruin Everything for me. This was the album that really I fell in love with Face to Face with, except for that fucking track at the end, garbage. I'm sorry, dude. I want to like you more, but that song sucks. Anyways, number 2, Frank and I are going to match back up for the last ones here. Don't Turn Around. Frank described it. It's probably one of the best debut punk rock records of the 90s. Just really fantastic. And then the first, number 1 is the self-titled Face to Face album. I really feel like they really had the idea of what they wanted to sound like. They knew what they were doing. And the chemistry in that room was perfect. It's the Face to Face record you want. And it's one of those moments with rock and roll in general, Frank, where I really feel like a band had the balls to be like, this is our seminal work. This is so much who we are as a band that we will name this record after ourselves, because this is our defining moment. And I really feel they pulled it off. And it speaks perfectly to that. If you're in a band and you're listening to this podcast, if you hear anything I say, if your self-titled fucking album doesn't totally fucking rip, call it something else. If it's not a pivotal moment, if it is not the staple of your band's career, call it anything else. Putting that label on it is going to tie that record to you forever.
Yeah.
You know what? Say what you want about Ignorance is Bliss or Protection or How to Ruin Everything or Reactionary, Laughing Out Loud. You will forget those records. You know what you won't forget? Face to Face's self-titled fucking record.
Yep.
Because it's on point. And your band, Jimmy's Chicken Shack, you're always going to remember that the Jimmy Chicken Shack self-titled album was garbage. I couldn't tell you if that was the name of their record or not. I'm just using that as an example. But really think about when you decide you're going to put that stamp on it. It worked for Sublime. Because that dude died and they probably couldn't agree on what to name the album, right? Because it got released after Bradley Nowell's death.
Right.
And there's actually an interesting story that is on the documentary where they're talking about Sublime's Santeria got leaked the same day one of their songs got leaked off of the self-titled album.
Oh, really?
And what A&M did for Sublime was push up the release of the record to capitalize on the fact that K-Rock was blowing up this record. And what Face to Face's terrible record company did was tell the radio station, stop playing that. The record doesn't come out for a month, and tank all the momentum that the song had because it was getting all this great airplay. It was Don't Lie Down.
Disconnected? Lie down. I Won't Lie Down.
I Won't Lie Down. It was
I Won't Lie Down.
And it was just like this ability to have this momentum that just got. And then, of course, what happens? A radio station like K-Rock out in LA that has all this influence, all this sway, now they're not interested. They've been told not to play this band's record. And you shot the band in the foot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you bring up so much right there, especially with the self-titled. I mean, a lot of times I think bands will just name it because they're like, oh, well, we haven't had a self-titled yet, so I think it's time, and I don't know what else to name it. Wrong idea. If you look at the classic self-titled records, whether it be intentional or not, like the Beatles' White Album, yes, I know everyone calls it the White Album. That thing was self-titled for a reason, right? Self-titled for a reason.
Unless you're releasing Van Halen 1.
Right, exactly. What about The Clash, their first record in 1977? Right, absolutely. Metallica, right, 1991, the Black Album, the first Weezer record.
Well, most of the Weezer records.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But they use it as a gimmick, right? And we get that. And now we just call them whatever the goddamn color of the record is, and it makes sense for them. But be thoughtful, right?
Right. There's some thought between it. Right. Absolutely.
Title track, self-titled things. Make sure that you're representing, right? Like if you came here and we're like this podcast called Check Out This Record and we started talking about fucking movies, you're like, what are these assholes talking
Thank.
about?
Absolutely. Right.
I mean, in fairness, most of you say, what are these assholes talking about? And you're not wrong, but we're
Right.
talking about music, and you signed up for a music podcast. You're gonna get two fat guys on the internet, well, at least one fat guy on the internet, who's gonna talk about music, and you get a relatively handsome guy like Frank, who's like saying sensible things about music, and that's what you signed up for. Whether you agree with our opinions or not,
Right.
that's up to you. And if you're willing to fucking talk shit on the internet, be
Back.
willing to reply to our comments, because if we don't like something that you liked and you tell us that we're fucking idiots for not liking it, we're gonna ask you what you liked about it, and then you're not gonna answer, and you look like the dickhead. Dickhead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey,
Sorry,
listen.
Frank, I had to get that off my
No,
chest.
it's okay, man. We'll converse with it. On the side note, we'll converse with anyone.
Yeah.
Just if we ask a
And
question though,
instantly.
I would love to hear the thoughts because it may
Yeah.
make us think about things in a different way or whatever the case is. But yeah, absolutely. With the self-titled stuff, you have to be precise. You have to be thoughtful with it. I write 10 songs tomorrow and I go under Frank DiMaria because I'm just a guy with an acoustic guitar and I name the thing Frank DiMaria. I would think if I gave it to Mark, he would be like, listen,
Wow, you said your whole name on the internet twice.
oh boy.
Yeah, you got to go back and edit
Yeah.
that. I don't know.
Yeah. I think I'm going to do that. All right, Mark.
Final thoughts, Frank.
Final thoughts. Okay. All right. So here we go. I've always viewed the band Face to Face as like a tier two, second shelf kind of 90s West Coast punk band. And I still feel that way. Their first four releases, yes, first four, very solid. And I think they suffer from the unfortunate circumstance of conflict with their label and conflict with the fans, and I feel for them, and I feel that they weren't able to progress to the point where they couldn't even acknowledge a record for a certain period of time. Now, listen, if it didn't over the years establish a cult following, then okay, then you have something to say about that. But it did, and those same fans started liking it. Maybe they grew up for sure and appreciated the record's reflective nature. Whatever the case is, I think that's a pivotal moment for the band. The back half of the catalog is filled with the same, I'm sorry, with some misfires, for sure. But beyond that, listen, I'm happy overall that they're still together and playing music. They aren't a life-changing band in regards to lyrics, and they're not going to make you overly expand your mind, or where the music is going to make you wonder, man, how did they do that? But that's okay. They're a very accessible band, and you can play them no matter what mood you're in. Tracks like Disconnected and I Won't Lie Down, to me, are timeless punk tracks, and they'll always bring a smile to my face. What about you, Mark?
So, first, I want to thank Frank for suggesting we do this, because I really had a great time getting into the catalog. There are those who will tell you playing punk rock is a young man's game, and once you hit a certain age, you just can't be punk anymore. And maybe for a time, that was true. I don't think that applies to a band like Face to Face. I'll agree that the bulk of their best work came from their days when they were young and hungry. Dare I say, when they were pissed off teenagers, as I described them before, as that kind of pissed off teenager anthem there for a while. Very angry. Very angry. However, they took some chances and did so with their hearts quite literally on their sleeves. For that alone, I give them a lot of credit. That said, yeah, the back half of that catalog got pretty cheesy and cliche, but they still managed to come back with a pretty cool album before their last, for their last kind of traditional studio album. Despite how bad Laugh Now and Laugh Later and Three Chords and fuck that record are, and they are bad. I don't want to say that to Trevor because he seems like a sensitive dude. Those
Yeah.
records are bad. I don't want anyone to say I gave them a pass. Those two records are trash, with the exception of maybe like 3 songs. Otherwise, they have a pretty earnest catalog that, while it has its faults, still has these wonderful shining moments that are incredibly human and relatable. And I think that's why people are so passionate about bands, especially bands like Face to Face. Maybe these records won't change your life, but they will confirm that you're not alone in a world that otherwise isn't paying attention to the outcasts of a punk rock music scene. Um, I'm kind of hoping we get another Face to Face record.
Yeah.
What do you think, Frank? You want another one?
I would take one, absolutely. Maybe, when was the last one released again? Protection was
16?
2016, and the acoustic album was, what, this past year, right? Or no, 2018? I would take one, absolutely. I mean, listen, if they come down and, we see them, if they come to our town and, they play, I would love to see them. Um,
Sure.
yeah, I would take a new album. I would. And I would listen to it, and I'd be down for that for sure.
I don't know if I'm pre-ordering it though. If
No,
I'm
no,
being
no,
honest,
no.
pre-order is going to be a trick. Like you gotta, I need a really good single with it, with
Yeah,
that pre-order form.
but I am gonna seek the self-titled on vinyl. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
I'd be interested to see how many vinyl releases they actually have. I'll be honest with you, I really haven't looked,
yeah,
um, but it would be interesting because
absolutely,
I'd definitely pick a few of those up.
for sure, for
Easily the
sure.
first,
Yeah, yeah,
if not the first 4 and 6.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, Nelly, Mark, what an episode that was. And we're going to kind of continue a little bit as far as genre and geographic location. So why don't you tell us what we have up next, Haas?
I literally flipped a coin to pick this choice, bud. And you know what they say? Kids don't like to share, Frank, and
They
here's
don't.
why. Unless we're talking about my feelings on Lagwagon's 1995 masterpiece, Hoss.
Haas.
Yeah, we're going to talk about our feelings about Hoss.
About Haas. Yeah. Man, listen, if we had to make a list of favorite bands, Lagwagon's going to be in my list, and I think yours too, Mark. This is their third record, Hoss. I'm amped to talk about these tracks. They're just so good, and I think there's not a bad Lagwagon record in the bunch. It's not a spotlight episode, but it's highlighting a really pivotal record in their catalog, Hoss. Um, I can't wait. I can't wait, Mark. What about you?
Yeah, no, this was a really cool moment in punk rock for me. I remember somebody putting on violins,
Yes.
and I went, "Whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, what's happening here?" They're
The
serious when they want to be serious. They're silly when they want to be silly.
the lyrics. Oh,
Yeah, some of the lyrics will make Frank cry.
yes.
Um, there's just really some really great tracks on here that have served the band fantastically well. Some that they, I think, probably will never play again. But it's one of those great things about 1995, the silliness that was
Oh,
punk rock at that time, what people accepted in terms of their mainstream music and what the underground wanted to do and wanted to say. I think Lagwagon's that great example of why, despite as stupid as the 90s were, why they were so awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Oh, can't wait to talk about them. Can't wait to talk about them. So, is everyone, as always, everyone, I hope you all enjoyed listening to our episode. Drop us a
I'm
line,
not worried about
like,
it. I liked it or not.
like a comment. Let us know. Let us know what you think about just
Mhm.
what records you like overall with Face to Face, and which ones you may not like, or just anything you want to say overall about them. Let us know. Let us know what records you want us to review. As always, I thank you, as does Mark, for listening, and stay safe out there.
Bye-bye.